In the spirit of The Aviator and The Irishman, this sounds straight out of Martin Scorsese. But this is all 100% true. This happened to a man so crazy he could only be portrayed by Alec Baldwin. The man, the myth, the mogul, John Zachary DeLorean. JZD was born January 6th, 1925 in good old Motor City, USA. He attended local technical high schools and was accepted in Lawrence Tech for engineering. And after World War II, he finished his studies with an apprenticeship at Chrysler. But in a bit of a backstab, he moved from Chrysler to Packard in 1953 because they, paid more. And he gained widespread recognition for engineering when he revamped their Ultramatic transmission with a new torque converter and dual drive ranges, calling it the Twin Ultramatic. Might as well be German. But even as Packard began struggling against the Big Three, DeLorean was planning to stay where he was, loyal to the end. Until GM's vice president of engineering gave him a job in any GM division he wanted, and that was too much of an opportunity to pass up. So he moved to Pontiac in 1956 with a starting salary in today's money of $150,000. And after developing a few patents for the company in the following years, he was promoted to chief engineer for his division. That gave him the power to make a car of his own. He took the standard mid-size Pontiac Le Mans and threw a 6.4-liter V8 in it, making 350 horsepower, and calling it Gran Turismo Omologato, or GTO. But GM upper management was not having any of this because of a few reasons. First, they did not want any mid-sized GM products with a big block motor because the Corvette existed, and also, the Corvette existed. But John was clever. He was always a thinker, so he simply made the GTO an options trim for the Le Mans. And since it wasn't technically a new car, GM couldn't throw a hissy fit. To be honest, nobody thought it would sell though, so they weren't too worried. But they were wrong. You see, this mid-sized, rear-wheel drive, two-door V8 Pontiac became the first proper muscle car, changing Detroit forever. It was a sales sensation and got DeLorean promoted to the head of Pontiac. And he didn't stop there. Seeing the development of the Mustang, he started to begin working on his own pony car, the Banshee, in 1965, before GM axed it due to Corvette infringement, and then proceeded to steal the design for the C3 Corvette. But in exchange for, stealing the Banshee away from Pontiac, they gave him the Camaro platform, so they could make the Firebird in 1967. Which means that when you combine the GTO, the Firebird, and the Grand Prix, DeLorean had made Pontiac a massive success. Even as other GM products saw declining sales, Pontiac remained strong. And that meant he was almost certainly slated to be the president of General Motors, except for the fact that GM management could not stand his active social life. You see, DeLorean was a bit of a rebel, with his partying, trendy outfits, magazine covers, and even inviting Ford's Lee Iacocca as his best man at his wedding. Ooh, that definitely leads to some non-conformity crises. But despite that, Chevy was struggling and they needed someone to straighten up things. So DeLorean got the call. And when he arrived at Chevrolet in 1969, it was bad. The Corvair was a failure, quality was dropping, and both the Nova and the Camaro were behind schedule. So he decided to reinvigorate Chevy when he launched the Vega in 1971, and he made sure that quality was up to standard by hiring extra inspectors to make sure production was smooth. Then, in typical GM fashion, management decided to cut costs and fired 800 workers, including the inspectors that were supposed to make their cars work. And if you would believe it, quality fell off a cliff. Assembly line workers began to steal parts, slow lines down, and simply half-finish cars in protest. So DeLorean had to get creative to sell this rather terrible Vega. He used his celebrity personality, he posed on more magazines, he touted just how amazing this car was. He claimed it could outhandle almost any European sports car and out-accelerate any car in its class. And barring the 1975 Cosworth Vega, it was a bald-faced lie. But it didn't matter how truthful it was, because the millionth Vega was produced in 1973, just as DeLorean resigned from General Motors. Resigned is the polite term for being kicked out and sent to a small accounting wing. You see, what happened is DeLorean wrote a speech for the up-and-coming Greenbrier Conference for that year, which was very critical of GM quality and management after the debacle of the labor cuts. So GM rewrote his script into something more executive-friendly. DeLorean didn't like that at all, and decided to accidentally leak his original script to the press, thinking it would make the public realize he was a chained-up genius, but instead it just got him kicked out of General Motors. DeLorean would later state about the GM direction this: they had too many bean counters and not enough engineers. Now, what do you do when you are a celebrity, former automotive executive at the top of his game who thinks he can do no wrong? Well, after his complicated retirement from GM, he did what anybody would do. He married a supermodel and started his own car company. Using his charms, he secured $200 million of investments from Johnny Carson, Sammy Davis Jr., and the British government in 1975. Now, the British was a strange one. I mean, you can kind of understand the celebrities wanting to voice support for a very popular person, but the British were in it for a different reason. If you pay attention to the British Isles in the mid-70s, it was bad in North Ireland. There was the troubles going on. It was an all-out civil war, and the UK wanted to tone things down a bit, and they thought by putting a car factory in North Ireland, giving these people jobs, they wouldn't riot. So in exchange for DeLorean putting his car factory there, the British government gave him a bunch of money. So, he had the factory, he had the workforce, he had the money, he had his charm. Now all he needed was a car. And DeLorean hired the best of the best, sir. He got Lotus to design the chassis and suspension. He got Giorgetto Giaro of Ital Design to pen the stainless steel body. And after many searches for engines, including rotaries, V8s, and V60s, he settled on the Peugeot Renault Volvo PRV V6. It was truly a worldwide car, and absolutely nothing went wrong whatsoever. Apart from the inexperienced Irish factory workers creating abysmal quality, or the incorrect steering alignment, or the hopeless windshield-embedded radio antenna, or the fact that the PRV engine made just 130 horsepower. Yes, that is, indeed, 63 horsepower less than the Fiesta ST, which gives the sports car a top speed of just 110 miles an hour for the price of just $87,000. Realizing its failures, DeLorean planned to create a twin-turbo version that could hit 150 miles an hour and out-accelerated a Porsche 928 GT. But disaster hit. You see, the performance of the DMC-12 and its quality failures meant that sales suffered, and less than 4,000 units were sold by 1982. More funds were desperately needed to sort out the issues, and a simple stock IPO could have solved all of the company problems, but John DeLorean knows all, and he was sure an outside investor would come in to save the day. It didn't. Even the promise of 100 actual 24-karat gold cars did not draw up the necessary funding, and the company began to go into receivership. And it was here where his friend James Hoffman comes into play. He called John about a $17 million deal in 1982 to save his company. And John, being a little bit desperate at this point, immediately flew over to Los Angeles to make the deal. But what his friend actually did was throw DeLorean into an FBI sting operation of $24 million of cocaine. Hoffman was actually a career drug smuggler who would be let off easy if he helped the FBI. And to be honest, even though the FBI literally had video evidence of DeLorean picking up the cocaine, looking at it and saying we're going to make a lot of money, that actually wasn't his biggest problem. Because it wasn't just the drug charges that he was accused of. He was also accused of embezzling over $17 million from investors and depositing it into accounts owned by himself and Lotus founder Colin Chapman. You see, the two of them set up a shell company called GRD in Switzerland, and after years of trial, DeLorean was found not guilty and cleared of all charges. But it was too late. Less than a month after DeLorean was indicted, DMC went bust in 1983. Sure, he was found not guilty, but John's reputation was ruined. His family had left him, and in 1999 he went bankrupt, spending the rest of his days in a one-bedroom apartment. He died in 2005, his tombstone with a picture of his DMC-12 gull-wing doors wide open. As a man, then, DeLorean is a complicated figure to root for. On one hand, he was unequivocally a genius. Certainly in his early years, he single-handedly changed the American auto industry for decades with the GTO, and single-handedly saved both Pontiac and Chevrolet. But on the other hand, the man was a scammer, a thief, and willing to be a drug dealer. For all intents and purposes, a colossal failure. But the irony of that failure is that the DeLorean name would grow a following years after production ended because, well, we all know what happens at 88 miles an hour. Back to the Future brought the DeLorean into the fame it always wanted, just 2 years too late for the company. Or did it? You see, for years after Back to the Future came out, people thought that it was indeed too little, too late for the company. But all that fame has led to a potential rebirth. DMC Texas was founded in 2007 and is planning to roll out new DMC-12s out of the thousands of unused parts from the original production. And thanks to the Low Volume Vehicle Manufacturing Act that was recently passed, DMC Texas is projected to resume production of the DMC-12 DeLorean in autumn of 2021. And as you can tell, we're in autumn of 2021, and there are no brand new DeLoreans. DMC Texas says on their website, a number of hurdles exist before production can begin. Further updates will be posted here. It seems sometimes cycles can never be broken.